or in the morning, I'd close my eyes. I'd feel like I'm going to die. I'd get out of bed, and I'd go downstairs. I'd kiss my kids goodbye, and then I'd go back to sleep. This happened a few times. I really believed I was going to die, and I was ready for it. The last time I had a drink was on a sukkahs. I drank bottles and bottles, but it just wasn't working for me anymore. And I remember almost everything clearly, no matter how much I drank. Motzei Shabbos, I came home. My wife needed to go help her cousin. I said, go, no problem, I'll watch the kids. When my wife came home, my kids were out in the sukkah, and I was out cold. And she was really angry with me, rightfully so. She tried to wake me up. After many attempts, she finally got me up. And when I woke up, I can't really explain this, but the only way I could say is that I had some sort of chemical imbalance where at one point I was just shouting at her, telling her how we're a mistake, we're never meant to be. I mentioned a few names of friends that had passed away, and I said they were smart. They knew exactly how to handle the way I'm feeling right now. As I was doing that, the other part of me knew how shameful it was that I was doing it. I was shouting at my wife in front of my kids. So to express that, I took a cup of water and I poured it over my head to show them how shameful Tati is. It's bad what he's doing. I went into the bathroom. I took one look in the mirror and I hated what I said. If you hated me at that moment as much as I hated myself, you would want to kill me too. And that's what I wanted. And I thought that was the best thing I can do. I believe it was extreme selfishness. I cared only about myself. But another part of me said, I don't deserve this wife and kids. And they're better off without me. I was given a gift of courage. On my way upstairs, I already envisioned it. I was going to go onto my roof from the back, and I was going to run and just jump. As far, without looking down. I was just going, but some part of me, I don't know why, I can only thank God for it. I called up a brother of mine, and I told him, please come and stop me from doing something stupid, something terrible to myself. Please come, it's an emergency. And he came with another 2 siblings, and they sat with me, and they couldn't understand me. Moshe, we look up to you. You have so much. And I couldn't explain it, but I knew what I felt, and I felt like I just had enough and I couldn't anymore. The Hatzalah member came, and I thank Hatzalah. Hatzalah member came, yes. A Hatzalah member came and spoke to me. I never met him before, but he changed my life. He convinced me, I don't know how he convinced me, definitely with the help of Hashem. He convinced me to get into his vehicle and he would take me somewhere that I'd be safe. As I got into the car, I turned back to my wife and I said, I really, really hope this works, because if it doesn't, there's no hope for me. And I was taken to a psych ward. And there, while I was there, was the one thing that I kept saying to myself was, what's such a nice guy like me doing in a place like this? I didn't feel like I fit in again. My family was in touch with a few people, I don't know who, but I think one of them was definitely Rabbi Yosef Lipsker from Pennsylvania. Give credit where it's due. And he helped my family and convinced them to go to Karen, Pennsylvania, which is a rehab, an inpatient rehab. And I was hearing nothing of it. I would not do it. But God sent me another angel. His name is Jack Masri, Olav Shalom. He was the only person there that I could relate to, and I owe him my life. I have no idea what he told me that day, but I know how I felt. And I felt like somebody understood me. He really got me. And this is what they call the therapeutic value of one addict speaking to another. He convinced me to go to rehab in no time. And I went to rehab, and when I was in the car on the way, there was a driver that was hired by the rehab. And he said, I'm not sure what they do out there, but I know for a fact that every person who leaves is always sad to leave. That gave me some comfort. And when I got there, I got a hug from somebody. I was the only religious dude, definitely the only one with a yarmulke. But this was one of the first times that I felt like I belonged. I got many hugs there, and my fantasy came true. I cried a lot. And I had the courage and I had the words to express my feelings. And there were many people there that told me everything would be okay, and they gave me hope. And I felt I was part of. Straight from rehab, I went straight to an outpatient. The car literally took me from the rehab straight to the outpatient, where they set me up there. And the person there also connected me with a sober member in our community, which I'm connected with until today. I was 14 months in outpatient, where I did a lot of I did a lot of rehab, a lot of therapy. We did personal therapy, group therapy, couples therapy, and it was great. It was amazing. I learned a lot about myself. I learned how to function. There was a time in my life that I could not, with all my might, imagine that I could possibly stay clean and sober for one day. Today I'm sober for 5.5 years, and tomorrow will mark 2. And tomorrow, that's my mother. Tomorrow will mark 2 years since my last cigarette. I have no guarantees of what tomorrow will bring and how long this will last, but I know for sure that I have many people that I can ask for help for. And if there's one lesson that I've learned from that Sukkot night and from all the nights since then, is that asking for help is an act of courage. It is not an act of weakness. Dear God, dear Eibishter, I have to conclude that if you kept me around until now, until this moment, where I stand, with whom I stand, it must be for a good purpose. I know now that if not for all the experiences that I did not want for myself, if not for all the pain, confusion, for the harm I've caused, if not for all of that, I would have nothing to contribute to you here today. If not for all that, I would have never been given the opportunity and the qualifications to help countless people from the depths of addiction and self-harm, from being a victim of bullying and self-bullying. So, dear God, dear Eibishter, I thank you. I thank you for my wife for staying by my side. I thank you for the moments of desperation and the willingness that allowed me to ask for help. I thank you for my family that showed up that Sukkot night and supported my rehab. Many of them maxed out all their credit cards just to get me in there. The Hatzalah member that said whatever he said to convince me to get into his car, and the angel that God sent to me in the psych ward. The rehab and the outpatient, for the sober people in our community that continue to support and enrich my life with meaning. And to all the members in Ichka Shtibel that support me, that stand up for me when somebody tries to offer me a drink, they say, you don't need to. Just back off. And for all of you who are watching me talk, and are helping me answer the question that I had for years of why me. Thank you.
Thank you. Certain words. There are seats up front. Please, gentlemen and ladies, the size of the crowd is quite incredible, and the depth of what was just said certainly befits the crowd. There are some words that keep on ringing in my mind of what Moshe just said. He said, and once again, I felt like I didn't belong. It's that feeling that I don't belong. We're going to move along. Dina Wordy is a wife, a mother of 2. Growing up, Dina attended Beis Chana in Eretz Yisrael and Beis Rivka in Crown Heights. She now runs her own catering business that focuses on using food to heal the body. She will be returning to medical school in August. Go, girl.
Wow. Yeah, is this good? Hi, I'm Dina. I'm also fearful, and especially after following you, you really brought tears to my eyes. That was very touching. I didn't prepare a speech. I just asked God to come with me and to help me share a message that could hopefully resonate for some people here. And that's really why I'm here. Otherwise, I wouldn't be telling you all my deep, dark secrets. So I was born to a Lubavitch family. My father's a shliach. We grew up on shlichos. We lived in Israel for some time, and I was the oldest daughter. I loved the part that I had. I loved the community that I was a part of. I was very excited about, the Chassidus. I would join these groups and memorize Tanya Baal Peh and compete. And I loved Israel. I loved growing up there. I could say that I was definitely, I just wanted to make sure that people noticed me and that I was special. That was something that I could remember from childhood. So I did a lot of extra things so that I can be special. So I did all kinds of extracurricular activities. I was a really, really good student and a really good daughter and friend. And I showed up in as many ways as I can all the time and always tried to wear that A+ hat. Sorry, I just saw some people in the crowd. So I moved to the States when I was 12, and for me that was a big culture shock. Although I was born here, and I moved to Israel when I was going into 2nd grade. It was just like a whole different community for me, and a lot of there were a lot of these things that I felt like I needed to do perfect. Like I needed to be perfectly tznius, and I needed to never speak lashon hara, and I needed to be this really good tzaddikas, and it didn't quite feel like I didn't understand the culture in the States where there was a focus more on maybe fashion labels and things like that. And it was a tough time for me in general. And I was searching to find my place and how did I belong to this new community, to what then was Beis Rivka, my family was in the middle of a lot of difficulties themselves, and just trying to find my place and to belong. I went that summer. I went to a camp. I'm not going to say the name, and I was a mother's helper for some family. And I think maybe because I was in a place that I was searching and I kind of was vulnerable. And for whatever reason, the husband, the father, who was working at this camp, without going into details, had sexually abused me. And this was something that was repeated. And to me, coming from the background that I came from, I knew that was something that was terribly wrong and that I could never ever speak about it because I was tainted and I would never ever be able to cleanse myself from this this dirt, this filth, this thing that was a terrible thing. And I remember saying to somebody that this was going on, and that person, maybe because I was, struggling in addition to that, just in general, didn't believe me. Like, they didn't think it was possible. This is a frum person, you know, he has a beard, has a prestigious job at this camp, you know, his wife is a nice woman, they have lots of kids, you know, how could this possibly be happening? And for me, you know, I just went inside and I was like, you know, if they don't believe me, you know, like I just need to like protect myself, and I don't know, like what, you know, maybe am I exaggerating? Is this really happening? Like I started questioning myself. At the end, that summer, somebody did, you know, I did tell one of the staff members at the camp, and like the next day I was picked up and I was driven to Montreal and sort of just never spoke about it again. And I remember that during that time, this like intense need to cleanse myself and to get rid of this was like, I couldn't explain, like I just needed to like scrub my insides, and I just wanted to disappear on the outside. I didn't want to be noticed. I didn't want anybody to ever look at me again. I kind of wanted to wear like this big garbage black bag, you know, and just cover myself and to disappear. I remember that when I went to Montreal, like the next day, I shaved my head. I just didn't want to look feminine or, you know, have that kind of, I didn't want that to happen again. For me, some like self-harm was a part of the picture. I started cutting myself, I think like because I had sort of shut down and I wasn't able to say anything, and I didn't want anybody to know, and I also, whoever I did tell didn't believe me, so I just kind of felt like the only thing that I could do is, you know, to shut down on the inside, but I was in so much pain and I didn't have a way to express it, so I would cut myself, and I felt like if I would cut myself, then that's like, you know, I still have scars, and that's the way that I can, you know, now like I feel this pain and it's here and I can see it and there's blood coming out and this is my pain, you know, this is the source of my pain, and that was my way of sort of keeping this inside, but getting it out somehow. For me, also immediately after, I started throwing up. I would force myself to throw up after everything, water, food, whatever. And that was my way of sort of cleansing on the outside. I also had showered a lot. I would scrub myself. I would wash my hands numerous times. I would constantly be reorganizing my room. I just wanted to know like where everything was and where the ends were and where the beginnings were, and everything just needed to be just perfectly so. And if something was out of whack, it would just make me feel very, very, very uncomfortable, very, very unsafe. Later on, just to, you know, go like a bunch of years later, when I went into therapy, I found out that for people that have been sexual abuse victims, sometimes this can happen to, you know, sometimes it happens once and that's it, and it never happens again. And for sometimes, it's almost like we wear like something on our forehead that says, you know, like I'm a victim, you know, and you can abuse me again. And for me, that's kind of what happened. And I would find myself in these situations, you know, although on the outside I wore huge clothes, I kept my hair short for a long time. I kind of like wanted people to back off, but instead, for some reason, it just kept happening. And I started feeling like there was something very, very wrong with me. Like, what was I doing? You know, how did this happen? How was it happening to me all the time? You know, like I didn't understand how, why I was this victim. And as this was going on, I was just using an eating disorder to medicate myself the entire time. So the more that this would happen, the more I would just, for me, it was bulimia and anorexia. So I would force myself to eat large quantities of foods just so that I could throw up, and to feel that sense of relief for that 1 second after I threw up, that I felt this relief, and then I would have to do it all over again. My parents noticed that something was wrong, and the school that I was in had noticed that something was wrong, and this is back to when I was 15, and they said, you know, like maybe I should go into a treatment facility. So they didn't really know exactly what was wrong. I quite honestly didn't know what was wrong myself. I didn't know that I had an eating disorder. I didn't even know that there was a label for that. I remember I went to Westchester Cornell, and they interviewed me and they asked me like, you know, a bunch of questions, and then all of a sudden I ended up on this eating disorder unit, and I had like no idea why there was an eating disorder unit. And there I met other people that had eating disorders, and I kind of actually found out how to have a better eating disorder, so to speak. So now all of a sudden my focus became on how do I, you know, become skinnier, and how do I control more? How do I control like my body, my size, my food? And I was actually recently talking to somebody and realizing that food is kind of like the only thing that we as children can control, you know? So like that was my source of control. And for me, you know, I went to this eating disorder unit, but I wasn't addressing the core issue. Like the core issue wasn't brought to the table at all, and I didn't feel safe to bring it up either. From there, because I was still struggling, and there were all these external things that were, still seemed to be not addressed. My parents felt that it wasn't safe for me to come home, so they transferred me to another unit. So I ended up being in an adolescent unit for another, I think, like 6 months or so. And there, it kind of like reinforced that feeling that like I remember having this like vision that, or in my mind, this like idea that like before I was born, I was like waiting in line to come down to this earth, and then God just kind of forgot to put some screws in my brain or something, and that there was something terribly wrong with me, and that I couldn't be fixed, that I was just damaged goods. So I kind of had this hopelessness that like I would never really quite be okay. And in that hospital, I remember seeing people come in and come out, and this was like a psychiatric unit where there was all kinds of people. The only thing that we had in common is that we were adolescents, so there were some people that talked to walls, or some people that wore helmets, there were all kinds of like different things, and I couldn't believe that I was one of them, I didn't understand why I was there. I ended up being there for so long because there was just nowhere to transfer me, I think. But for me, and this is something that like I know that, it's funny because I'm actually going into medicine, God willing, and I hope to be able to bring, some help to this, to the future people. But thank you. But the psychiatric units actually reinforced this idea that I was really sick, and I was really missing something. And like fast forward into the future, every time that something like it felt like I just couldn't handle it and I didn't know how to fix myself, I would just check myself into a psychiatric unit because I felt like, well, they're qualified, they have a degree, they know what to do. I'm clearly missing some stuff, so I need to go in there. They're going to rewire me, fix me, and then I'll come out a normal person. But I didn't take that. I didn't feel like I had the capacity to heal myself. And I think for me, so my story ended up being that I was in a bunch of units throughout my life because I would constantly check myself back in when I felt like I just couldn't manage my life anymore. Never really addressing the core issue, and always looking at the external things. It was always like, well, maybe I'm bipolar, or maybe I have, borderline personality disorder, maybe I have, an eating disorder clearly, and things like that. And I was always, or major depression, and there were so many labels, and I was like, happy to accumulate more labels because it just made me feel like, okay, well, this is what's wrong with me, and then if we just fix this box, then I'll be okay. For me, the eating disorder got progressively worse. I ended up being at a place that I was about half my weight and my current weight, and I was like a walking skeleton, and I remember I was hospitalized numerous times. I would walk across the street. I remember walking across 34th Street, fainting in the middle. I would faint in the shower. I was, it was really affecting my life in a tremendous way. I remember in my bulimia stage where I would be in the bathroom vomiting and somebody would open the door and I would feel this immense source of shame and just this guilt. And I didn't want to be doing what I was doing, but I didn't know how to stop. And the purging was what gave me relief. So it was like a constant thing. It wasn't like I would just, eat and then I not want the calories. I just needed that relief, that constant relief. So I was constantly doing it. I remember one of my siblings walking in on me in the bathroom, and I was just so ashamed. I was so ashamed, and I didn't know how to explain what I was doing, and it was a very painful time. And at the same time, I was still walking around with this guilt of, having been this tainted person and having done something that was terribly wrong. So fast forward to 10 years ago, I'm really grateful that I had come across, somebody had recommended Crime Victims Treatment Center, which is a facility in Manhattan on the Upper West Side. That's completely free for victims of sexual abuse. For no matter what your income is, they don't ask you about your background or anything. And that, for me alone, was this huge gift because I had been to so many therapists and so many psychiatrists and so many treatment centers, and I never really got any, I was never helped. I just felt like I was this hopeless case, and I really felt like I would rather, just die. I'm just a source of pain to all these people around me, and I'm dragging everyone down. Everybody would be so much better off if I was just dead. So and going to this place that was free just felt like they care about me. Like, why do they care about me? Why would they do this for me? This is like this gift and they don't even know who I am or like what I did or what I didn't do. And to me, that was like the first part of the healing. I think is just to know that I was worthy enough of getting help from somebody completely anonymous who's funding that I don't even know who it is. And I went there and I was there for almost 3 years. I think now at this point they have like a certain curriculum that they work with, but I'm really grateful that I got connected with this amazing therapist. And she really worked with me slowly and patiently. And slowly I started coming out with all of the shame and the guilt that tormented me for years. And that feeling of just wanting to disappear and just not wanting to be seen and just feeling like, I've already seen life. It sucks. Like, I'm done. The not trusting. And slowly what was so amazing was that we didn't really address the eating disorder directly. But by addressing the core issue, the eating disorder sort of took less of a importance. And I remember at the time, like when I had started, I was probably binging and purging like 10 times a day. And at some point, I remember it was like once a day. And to me, I felt like I was cured. It was like I was done, Like now, I officially have no more of an eating disorder because it wasn't consuming my life anymore. And then slowly it became like once a week or once a month. And it just kind of went away because those feelings that were plaguing me were being addressed, and like I started